Okay, so we're now on episode 4, entitled Knock Knock, which we originally thought was going to be called The Haunted Hub, I believe.
The Haunted Hub. Oh my gosh. Well, that's really interesting. I've been learning a lot about how much episodes change from pitch to, like the final finished episode. Like Jamie Matheson was talking about in an interview recently about how much Oxygen changed, and it sounds like this episode was always going to be about students. It was always going to be about Bill's university life. But we've gone from the student hub, which is haunted, to a spooky house renting story. So that's interesting, isn't it?
It is. I mean, because you've talked about how the evolution of stories, even the last-minute evolution of stories, can be seriously detrimental in the case of Nightmare in Silver.
Yeah, it can be.
This one, I happen to like, but with the knowledge that it is flawed.
Yeah.
I'll just say, first of all, I quite enjoyed these student stereotypes because they're all totally thick.
Yes. Well, I think what's interesting about them is that I don't think they are thick. I think they're doing really stupid stuff to show off to each other, which is, in my university experience, one of the most authentic things you can show young people doing.
Maybe. Like, out of nerves, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, out of socially trying to... Yeah.
Do you remember the sort of bug-eyed one called Harry?
Is he the one who gets eaten in quite a nasty way?
By the cockroaches coming out the stairway. The one who was sort of the Doctor's companion for half the episode. Yeah, that one.
Lucky man.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, when he first comes on screen, he's a complete tit, you know? He's like, oh, it's the Doctor, high five. In a way that no one would ever do to their lecturer. But
I love the look that Capaldi gives him when he says "legend" and puts his hand in the air. It's just like it's somewhere between disdain and confusion.
I just sort of thought because I think that character he gets better as we see other sides of him. We see him sort of like working out the mystery with the Doctor, and we see him frightened. I think he is overacted. But also, I think that sort of young person stupidity coming from a place of insecurity is quite authentic.
Yes. Yeah, well, yeah, that's many people we know. So I agree with you. I think it's there are stereotypical elements, but they come from a real place.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
But just the fact that they even follow this man into the house is just quite amusing. Like, I've got a place to live if you like. And then, off they go. Okay, so
the world's creepiest man.
The world's creepiest man says, I've got a place for you to live. They go in and it's suspicious as all hell. And it's like, ooh, the price is low, though. That's just good comedy. And combine that with, Sorry?
I was going to say, I'm enjoying it more talking about it with you. I think we're finding there's little entertaining bits, and actually, as a script, it's very entertaining. But I felt there were deeper flaws with it. But anyway, you were about to say something.
Of course. So all I'll say is, right, I was able to see this through the prism of someone who wanted to be a teeny bit scared, a teeny bit grossed out by the setup, and that's exactly what I got. I think some of the effects in this one really made my eyes widen as it happens. Like with the student who gets eaten by the wall, but he's like half eaten, not quite eaten. I mean, that's the sort of thing you see in things like Silent Hill. It's a terrifying image, and I mean, his pupils are gone and all that stuff. And if you watch the video about how that was done, it's really quite incredible. So I just appreciated the aesthetic of it in many ways. And then you've got this woman who's in the spoilers. This woman who's in the tower who is basically entirely made of wood. I mean, that's a creepy as hell image, pulled off brilliantly. It's still very expressive underneath all that makeup. The actor manages to convey it. I appreciated that. Nice, gross and scary, but comprehensible is the sort of thing I was always looking for in things like Series 3. So it was a little bit of a harking back to that, I suppose. Narrative problems, absolutely exist. Like when David Suchet and the landlord and the woman and the doctor and Bill, once they're all in the tower together, I did almost feel like, oh, half an hour's gone already. Like I feel like it was a. This is actually now. Here's one thing, right? Series 9 made me think that every story should be a two-parter because it's just better, right?
Yeah.
Episodes 1, 2, and 3 of this series sort of proved me wrong. Like, those ones, I feel like they work as one-parters, especially the pilot. That just works.
Yeah.
This one, I actually think could have been given more space to give itself a bit more layering so that the mystery behind what's going on and the sort of emotional, quite sentimental resolution carried more weight. I don't mind a bit of sentimentality. It maybe went a little bit too far near the end. Loads and loads of tears are being shed.
I don't mind. I don't mind emotional things. I don't mind emotional things, but I think when it feels overly sentimental, that's because they sort of haven't done enough legwork. So
I agree.
Within
the
space of about 5 minutes, you've discovered the existence of this wooden woman, and then so we have to establish that she believes the caretaker is her father. Then we have to have him come up, and then we have to have the twist that he's actually her son. There's quite a lot going on. It's like we haven't been introduced to what we were supposed to believe long enough for the twist to have much weight, because we've only just been told what we were meant to think. See what I mean?
Absolutely see what you mean. Do you think that if this was a more deeply layered story with two parts to it, and more of an attempt to allow us to emotionally engage with those characters, that it would have succeeded a bit more?
Yeah, it could well have done. Yeah, that's probably a good point. And more space between the students getting killed off, because it just sort of happens, like one after another. Oh, dead.
Yeah,
little gap,
it was a bit like
dead.
It was kind of like it was basically a whodunit, a sort of Cluedo sort of thing. Like, oh no, this one's dead. What's going on? Like, yeah, I know, I know that's what it is, and I know it's not. There's very little reading between the lines you can do here. I just happened to enjoy a lot of the comedy, and I thought the scares were quite. It was just right for me to squirm. I don't know. I was going to say something else about David Suchet, actually, because he has worked with Capaldi before. He was.
Yeah.
This is a house that he had rented for Christmas the previous year, and he discovered that quite late on in filming, which was quite amusing, and he got on with him. So the interview with him is quite good. But that was done on the fan show, and it occurred to me that, within the first few Doctor Who series, what we had was Doctor Who Confidential. That was where you get all the behind-the-scenes information. And then it changed into something else, I think, called Doctor Who Extra, where you had an extra annoying narrator who would tell you exactly what was going on in the most patronising voice possible. And then now, basically the fan show is Doctor Who Confidential. It's the supplementary material. It's all the supplementary material. I kind of find that interesting. It's like the fans really have claimed the show in the ultimate way.
Well, something I find very interesting about internet parlance is that we no longer talk about properties as properties or franchises. People talk about them as fandoms. They say, I belong to Harry Potter fandom and Torchwood fandom, So it's almost we spend so much time talking and discussing and creating things around the show. It's actually far more time. The community around Doctor Who is actually far more time consuming than the show itself. Even for people like me who just watch it a ridiculous amount of times. It wasn't on at all last year, and it was still in my mind every so often, So being a fan is about more than the show, isn't it? It's about the community.
It is, and it's sort of a religion.
I have to say, when I first heard about the Doctor Who fan show, I just thought it sounded dreadful. I thought it was... We were talking a couple of videos ago about Smile and, simplicity. I just thought it would be just absolutely dreadful BBC trying to connect with young people. But the presenter, Crystal, like the presenters have their moments of being a wee bit just, oh God, shut up. But actually, she's a very good interviewer, in my opinion. I think she's
agree.
A very good journalist. She really has the most. She always asks the questions that I really want to hear the answers to, especially to the writers. She really reveals things about the thought process that goes into these episodes. So I really appreciate the show for that.
Absolutely. She's incredibly charming, and she knows that people are more willing to speak honestly about these things when you're just really nice to them. That's what I found with every interviewer. It's the best interviews are the ones where they give you plenty of scope to speak at length, but you're also decent to them, as I say. So yeah, I just appreciated that element, and I wanted to mention it because I'm not quite sure what else to say about Knock Knock.
Well, I'm going to try to outline my big problem with it, because we said a lot of really positive things about it. But I think what holds it back for me is, and I do go into this in my blog. Yeah, I mean, I know it's a bit self-indulgent to keep bringing it up, but I do put a lot of time into it.
No, of course, no. We want people to read it.
So I think the blog says it better than I will now, but I'm just going to go for it. I think there's real logical story inconsistencies with this. So we were talking about how Smile, even though maybe not enough things happen on the screen, the logical consistency of it is about emotional simplicity, and the monster is an emoji robot, and the society's problem is that it's overly simple. I don't get the connection between a story about a mother and a son with a sort of Oedipal thing going on, and the monster being a house that sucks people into the walls, but also it's a woodlouse which eats people, and also surely the hook of the episode is knock knock, but there's only one moment in the episode where we hear that knock knock thing. And they did that in Midnight, and it made sense in Midnight. And there was a logical consistency to Midnight about the reason that the monster knocks is because we don't know what this monster is. It's unknown, and so there's that knocking that you hear, but you can't see what it is. I don't get why. Can woodlouse knock? Is that a thing? Where did that come from? And what is it about this? That's the point. I think there's loads of really good ideas in here, but none of it quite holds together in terms of one episode with one central theme at its heart. So the pilot was about Bill, who wants to leave. She wants to leave and experience new things. So the puddle finds Heather, who wants to leave the planet. That's the thing. It's about adventure and a young person's potential. Smile is about emojis and an emotionally simple future, that kind of thing. Thin Ice is about, as we said, capitalism and exploiting the lowest people in society. So we see contrasts between the workhouse and the Lord's house. Oxygen is again about capitalism. It's about charging for oxygen. And the enemies are the suits, quote unquote, the people in suits in boardrooms, the faceless people that you can't see, and the physical enemy are faceless space suits, right? It just all weaves together like a tight story, a tight short story, where the characters and the themes and the enemies and the obstacles make sense. I don't think Knock Knock does this. And so for
I agree.
me,
There's a lack of consistency.
Yeah.
I think it's a series of entertaining moments is the best way I can really sum it up. And it's got nice aesthetical scares and aesthetical emotions that come out in the climax. But you're right. There is no real central theme. When it comes to narrative and the structure of it, I do think there was a bit too much of the landlord just sort of popping up. Like, and then he pops up again, and then suddenly we're in the tower. Look, it just felt rushed, actually. That was one of my main problems with it, is that the story didn't have the beats. I don't know who wrote this one. It was someone new, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Mike Bartlett.
Mike Bartlett. So would you say he maybe specialises in the sort of... Yeah, specialises in scares and punchiness, but not in, like, yeah.
Kind of like I said earlier, I think what he specialises in is writing stories about contemporary life. So, but sort of like heightening them and making them a little bit melodramatic, because that's what his series Dr. Foster was. It was about a marriage which isn't working. And this, I thought what he did best was the students. And yeah, he kind of made them a little bit cartoony, but also, as we said earlier, there was that nugget of authenticity to them, which you could grasp onto. Yeah. So I think that's what he did best.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm glad that the scares worked for you. They didn't really work for me.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a case of, whoa, you're going quite far here. But that's a very superficial sensation. What else can I say?
I don't mind, no.
Yeah. Absolutely. And David Suchet, I actually think, is quite an entertaining presence.
I think seeing in the interviews the amount of passion that he had for it and how excited he was to be there, that really adds to it. That really, I think his enthusiasm for the role enhanced it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, just in the preview clips in particular, I was just thinking, oh yeah, this is good. There's a dynamic he's already building up with the Doctor that I think is going to be interesting. And then he practically has to fall apart at the end. And, you know, despite what we've said about where that comes from and how sudden it is, I think he did a good job. What do you think of the whole, oh look, fireworks, students having fun? Do you think that was a bit forced?
It was a bit cheesy, but, you know, I think it was set up appropriately, so I didn't really mind.
Sure, yeah. Okay, well, I think unless you have anything else to add about Knock Knock...
No, I think I've covered what I want to say.
Then we can stop this review and do Oxygen next time.
Goodbye.